Let's review together the top 3 tools I'm using to fight my mom's dementia and cognitive decline. You're probably thinking that these conditions are irreversible, terminal, right? Well, stick around until the end. I'll show you that it might not always be the case, at least completely. Now, my overall plan is more articulated than 3 tools, but today I will focus on the 3 tools that pertain brain energy. We'll review everything else in future videos. But before going into the details of these 3 tools, let's quickly review my mom's progress in the past 2.5 weeks, since I started implementing my plan on April 6th, 2023. I've created a small tool to capture a number of parameters related to my mom's health. And in particular today, let's review the scoring section of this tool. So in the scoring section, I have a few dimensions such as anxiety, cognitive performance, depression, physical performance, short-term memory, medium-term memory, and for each of these, I give a qualitative score between 0 and 10. Anytime during the day, when I notice some change, I log the score. Now check this out. I'll go into more details on these charts in future videos, but what you can gather from these is that, first, there is a lot of progress on almost all dimensions. Progress is not linear. It goes up and down. The important thing is the trend. And then I found some interesting correlations between the dips that you see in these charts and some other biometric data. We will discuss these in future videos. So there is so much to say about all of this, the login tool, the charts, etc., etc. But today, let's focus on the 3 main tools I'm using to manage brain energy. Number 1, a very strict ketogenic diet. Number 2, exogenous ketones. Number 3, glucose and ketone meters. In order to understand why all of this is important in managing a dementia patient, we need to understand some key metabolic and brain energy concepts. If you know these already, you can skip ahead. But let's hear from Dr. Bredesen and Dr. Palmer.
So for good brain function, you want to be able to have some ketosis. So you want to have a mildly ketotic diet. So the thing is that your brain functions, it's got to have energy. And you get 2 types. You can either metabolize glucose, or you can metabolize ketones. That's what your mitochondria use in your brain. And good brain function is a lot about energetics, as we talked about before. And by the way, Alzheimer's is a lot about poor energetics. So what happens is, so many of us, we should be metabolically flexible. You should be able to go back and forth. You have some carbs, you metabolize that. The next meal you have a lot of fats, you metabolize ketones, which come from the metabolism of the fats, and you go back and forth. That's where you want to be. For so many of us, though, we're purely on the carbs.
So we've got a couple of small pilot clinical trials. The best one was a randomized controlled trial. I think it only included 26 subjects, something like that. And that trial actually found that when patients were in ketosis, they had statistically significant improvement in activities of daily living and quality of life. And they did have improvement in cognitive function, but it didn't reach statistical significance.
So to sum it up, our brain can only use glucose and ketones as fuels to produce energy. Most Alzheimer's and dementia patients have impaired glucose metabolism in their brain and desperately need ketones to produce energy. Our body cannot produce ketones if there is too much sugar and carbohydrates in our diet. And finally, the ketogenic diet seems to be helping improve memory, quality of life, daily living activities, and even cognitive function. Great. Now that we know all of this, let's review the 3 tools. Let's start from the ketogenic diet. Now, if you don't know, the ketogenic diet is a nutrition plan that promotes ketosis. So it's a high-fat, moderate protein, very low carbohydrates that pushes your body to consume all the glucose, lower insulin, and finally use your fat. And a byproduct of that is ketones. I had already implemented a less strict ketogenic diet between September and December 2022 with already good results. And now, since April 6, 2023, I've removed all sugars and all carbohydrates from my mom's diet, fruit included. Her diet now is mainly focused on whole, natural, nutrient-dense foods, which means animal foods, and some non-starchy vegetables here and there. With this approach, I was able to lower her daily average blood glucose from 125 milligrams per deciliter to 100 milligrams per deciliter in just 5 days. Also, I eliminated all the food-induced blood glucose spikes, and I was able to finally allow her body to make the metabolic switch and produce her own ketones. Okay, but because her body was not producing ketones at the beginning, I had to use another tool, which is exogenous ketones. And I use mainly two. The first one is Ketone IQ. This is a great product that can bump up her ketones to over 2 millimole per liter. I give her 2 doses a day, one in the early morning and one at lunchtime. And I do that even now that she's producing her own ketones, in order to achieve even deeper ketosis. Another form of exogenous ketones that I've been using in the past and I'm using now is MCT oil, and specifically C8 aka caprylic acid MCT oil. Let's review this study that I found on caprylic acid and Alzheimer's disease. Results from this case review study indicated that addition of CT, caprylic triglyceride, to pharmacotherapy for Alzheimer's disease was associated with stable disease or improvement for some patients. In particular, addition of caprylic triglycerides seemed to have slowed the rate of decline as measured by MMSE scores. And lastly, all of these needed measurement. Because the focus of all of this is brain energy and in particular glucose and ketones, I needed to have a way to measure the glucose status and ketones. So to that end, I use two main meters. One is a continuous glucose monitor and the second one is a ketone meter. So let's start from the continuous glucose monitor. So I was able to purchase a couple of Freestyle Libre 2 sensors, and I attached them to my mom's arm. And I discovered a few notable things. So first of all, her average daily blood glucose dropped from a max of 125 milligrams per deciliter to a minimum of 100 milligrams per deciliter in just 5-6 days. Towards the end of the 2 weeks, I decided to give her some carbohydrates right here. And her blood glucose rose a little bit to 110 milligrams per deciliter approximately for the next couple of days. Then I noticed that she has a physiological blood glucose spike at around 8:30 a.m. every morning, probably the dawn effect. There have been some strange dips and spikes during some nights when she woke up multiple times and could not sleep well, like here, here, and here. The strict no sugar, no carb diet flattened the curve. So after the physiologic 8:30 a.m. spike, her blood glucose was basically flat. And finally, I noticed that walking had a fast and powerful blood glucose lowering effect. So in future videos, I will try to correlate the blood glucose and all the parameters that I'm tracking. But there is no doubt that with a CGM, you can gather a lot of insights. And then finally, let's talk about the Keto Mojo. So with this device, you can basically draw some blood and analyze the circulating blood glucose and ketones. I do it 2 to 3 times a day with my mom, even more sometimes. And this allows me to monitor both her endogenous ketones production and the effect of the exogenous ketones that I talked about. And here are the results in the past 2.5 weeks. If you look at the red line is the ketones. She started basically at 0, and that the first bumps are due to the ketone IQ, so the exogenous ketones. And slowly but steadily, the ketones increased. Then the Keto Mojo also provides you with a GKI index, which is a glucose ketone index, which is a formula that takes into account both glucose and ketones. And the lower that index is, the better. So you can see that at the beginning, it was very high, like 17, 20. But then, slowly but surely, with the ketogenic diet, with the exogenous ketones, and finally with the endogenous ketone production, I was able to bring the number, the GKI number, down below 3. They say that for an Alzheimer's or dementia patient, the ideal range is 1 to 3. In the past week, you can see that my mom was almost every day in that range. Then I also have another ketone meter, a breath analyzer. It's called Biosense, but maybe I will talk about this in another video, in a future video. As you can see, progress is possible. Don't think that dementia and cognitive decline are irreversible and terminal conditions. I would suggest that you research, read, listen to both Dr. Bredesen and Dr. Palmer and many others, and get inspired and take action. That's what I did, and that's what I'm doing with my mom. All right, I hope this was useful. If you have any questions for me, please let me know in the YouTube comments below. I'll help to the best of my abilities. Until the next video, bye now.